Hey everyone, welcome to Long Game Yoga, Beginner's Yoga for Athletes, episode 4. This is a big one because I'm going to cover all of the, well, maybe not every, but many of the standing poses that we find in our practice. So this is going to cover 90% of what you'll find in the flows on the channel or other flows online or at studios. And so before we start, I just wanted to break it down so we can think of it in like two groups of these standing poses. So in the last episode, we did a bunch of knee down stuff. So some of these poses are just extensions of that. We're doing it without the knee down on the mat. So the first group are open hip poses. Because I find this is the distinction that people sometimes get tripped up on. This question of like, where are my hips facing when I'm standing? So there's the open hip poses, which are going to be warrior 2, reverse warrior, triangle, side angle. I'll show you how that works. And then there's the poses that the hips are square, so they're facing the front edge of the mat in that direction. And so that's going to be diagonal lunge, warrior 1, crescent lunge, and pyramid. So we're going to see some of each. You know, there are other standing poses out there, some more balancing ones. We'll get into those at some point. But for now, I just want to draw that distinction between those two groups of poses, and I'm going to hit them in a group. Boom, open hip ones, boom, square hip ones. And then, as usual, we'll put it together in a flow. I'm going to move through them relatively quickly so I can give you all the real big alignment cues to look for. And as I said before, this is really to give you like the threshold knowledge, right? This will give you enough to get in there and start to feel how it works in your own body so that as you're participating in flows, the refinement will come. I don't expect anybody to just come out of this video knowing everything about every standing pose, and I wouldn't try to do that. I think it's a process that you have to work your way through. So let's get started. We'll start in a down dog because part of what I want to make sure this episode gets across to you is how do we get into these poses in the first place? Because that's something that when people are starting yoga can be a little bit confounding to them. I know it was for me. So let's come to a downward facing dog. And it's not, this is not the world's greatest mystery. We're going to be stepping a foot forward. And usually, you'll see in my flows a lot of the times, we'll either start from a three-legged dog where the back leg that's going to become the front leg is lifted, or sometimes it might just be down on the mat itself. So let's take it from down on the mat, but it's the same thing either way. So from down on the mat, I'm going to step my right foot forward, and it's going to come all the way to my thumb. So right away I can tell I've got my knee over my ankle, and that's what I want. So as we move into these open hip stances, what I'm going to show you is where to put the feet first. So we've got the right foot, the front foot under the knee, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot and plant my back heel. So my back foot right now is up at about a 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to heel toe that front foot in so that the heel lines up with the middle of my back inner arch of the back foot. And you can have your blocks handy nearby. We'll be using those in a bit. But so this shape, front foot, my toes are pointing straight at the short edge of the mat. It's parallel to the long edge of the mat. The knee is right above the ankle. We want to protect our knee ligaments, so that's important. Got a nice deep bend in the front leg. Doesn't need to be like, rah, one of those, but it should feel effortful and purposeful. Back leg is straight. We've got that front heel to back inner arch alignment. So this is going to cover the open hip poses. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lift the torso upright like this. So I've got that nice deep bend in the front leg. My back leg is straight. My heel is lined up with the back inner arch. That's the foundation. So let's start with warrior 2. I think of this as like the prototypical yoga pose. It's one of the things I think most people think of when they think of yoga, but I don't know, maybe not. But you can see here in this stance, my hips are open. I've got this external rotation in the front leg. Back leg is kind of neutral, but engaged. I'm pressing down through the pinky toe side edge of that foot. Hips are open, torso is squaring to the long edge of the mat. And then before I go anywhere else, I'm going to take a peek down at my front foot. I want to see the big toe. If I can't, it means this knee is coming in. It's collapsing in. We don't want that. We want it pulling out. So you can engage the outer muscles of the leg, pull it out, make sure you can see the big toe. And there are the legs. Open hip stance. Boom, arms come out. This is warrior two. So again, my chest is squaring to the long edge of the mat. And if I want to go by tradition, I'm looking out over the right hand, if that's the side with the lead leg. On the other side, we'd switch. Looking out over that middle finger. I'm trying to keep this part of my neck and upper shoulders, the traps up here, trying to keep them relaxed so we're not hiking our shoulders up by our ears. We're letting them come down, staying relaxed. The torso is in that sort of mountain shape. Gaze is out over the front finger. And that's warrior two. Right? You're reaching, you're sinking, you're engaging the muscles. Now let's look at reverse warrior. Nothing changes except the front hand. Palm comes up. And then we reach that arm overhead. So we're stretching the outer side of the right rib cage here. We've got this side bend on top of the same leg shape that we were in. You can look up. You don't want to collapse down. You can look up, reach up. And that's warrior, that's reverse warrior. So warrior two, reverse warrior, same exact legs, same alignment of the feet, same open hip distinction that we're talking about here. So let's look at triangle next. And you may have noticed, I just did, my legs are already in triangle, right? So from that warrior two shape with that bent leg, all we do is boop, straighten the front leg. So from warrior two, reverse warrior, we straighten the leg, level off the hips. So we don't want to be, I don't know, disco hip. We want to be level on the hips. I want to keep the heel lined up with the back inner arch. And you'll notice I haven't had to move my feet at all to go through these three poses. And I'm not going to have to move it to go through side angle after this. So the big difference is with triangle, the front leg is bent. Maybe there's a little micro bend in that front leg. If you're a knee locker, and especially if you're a knee locker with a little bit of hyper mobility, you don't want to do that. You want to keep a little bend in that front leg. You can think about pressing the big toe mound in to the mat a little bit. That helps create that sense of a micro bend. So for triangle, you might want to have a block handy to the outside of that front foot. But what we're going to do again, keeping the hips nice and level, triangle has a sideways lateral, I guess you'd say, hip hinge. So I'm going to be coming over and leaning this way, right? And now one thing I want to point out as we're getting the torso where it needs to be, usually we're going to lift that right arm up, reach it up and out. See how it's coming up and out? And then that hand is going to come down. But I want to take a minute before we focus on the hand to focus on what's happening here. So I've got this lateral hinge on the hips. But on this one here, I'm not trying to open the hip up all the way, right? You might have the mobility to do that, but we don't want to put any stress on the SI joints in our low back. So if it means that this back hip is rotated even down a little bit, that's okay for your triangle. We don't want to go so far that we're starting to get some SI joint issues here. So float this back hip where it is comfortable for you. We've got this nice hinge here, and we're trying to lengthen the right rib cage so we're not bending down, we're coming up and out. So again, the arms come up and out, and then you can bring your hand, couple choices, either to the inside of the front leg. You can bring your hand right to your shin. Totally cool. Or you can bring your hand to a block on the highest height behind the leg. And so you've got a little bit of stability there. Legs are still engaged. And then for that top arm, you can just lift it up and overhead. So we're reaching with the arms, right? If I had my hand in front, same thing. reaching, and then we're spiraling that torso open toward the long edge of the mat, as if there was a wall right behind you and you're just trying to lean your left shoulder, the high shoulder, into the wall, right? And then you can also think of this, because really what it is too, it's a spiral of the torso. So when you're in that Trikonasana shape, that's the Sanskrit for triangle, you are twisting open. So the hips to the belly button start to twist, and then from the belly button to the sternum, and then from the sternum to the collarbones, it's spiraling out into this twist. So that's your Trikonasana, that's your triangle pose. And then let's take that top hand, let's just bring it down to the hip for a second. So that's the one of this open hip family where the legs are straight. For the last one we're going to look at, side angle, we're going to rebend that front leg. So that leg bends, and again, that's the shape it was in when we were in Warrior 2, when we were in our reverse warrior. This time though, for side angle, we extend that torso sideways with that lateral hinge, but we bring the forearm down to the bent leg. So the leg isn't straight like triangle, the leg is bent. We've still got that knee above the ankle. You're resting the forearm lightly, you're not just dumping all your weight into it. So I could lift the arm up, torso stays in the same spot, but you've got that nice connection. Back leg is straight, front leg is bent, left arm lifts up. If you've got shoulder issues, you can bring the hand behind your back. You can bring your hand to the hip. If you want to extend the side angle, sometimes you'll see this in my flows. Just sweep that top arm up and overhead so that the tricep is up by my left ear. I'm getting long from the outside edge of my left foot through my left fingertips. And that side angle. How do you come out? If you want to come out, you just unwind. You can move your block out of the way, frame your front foot up, step back to a down dog, or step back to a plank. You can take a vinyasa at that point. So those are the open hip standing poses. Now what we're going to look at are the standing poses where the hips are squared. They're squared to the front of your mat or close to squared. So I'm making a little bit of a little niggly little grammar distinction here, or semantics. So when our hips are open, boom, this hip is open, boom, a lot of external rotation. What we're looking at now are 3 stances, or really kind of 4, let's call it 4. There's going to be a diagonal lunge, like this. So my hips are squared to the front. There's going to be a crescent lunge, or a high lunge, sometimes it's called, where the torso is upright. So diagonal lunge is here, here it's here. There's going to be a pyramid pose, and I'll break them down a little bit in a second with more detail, but just so you get the sense of the differentiation. Pyramid pose, again, my hips are square. And then the big one is Warrior 1, which is I'm still mostly squared. So that's where that caveat came in. I'm not grammaring well today, am I? In Warrior 1, we're not going to get the hips quite square to the front edge of the mat, but it's not open, right? It's not open. It's still pretty much shining in that direction. So that's the distinction between those 2 families of standing poses. I hope that makes sense for you. We'll take a look in a little bit more detail, and I'll show you how it connects with what we looked at in episode 3. So let's start with the diagonal lunge. I'm going to do this facing the other way because I don't want to get completely uneven side to side by doing all 8 of these poses on one side. So in our last episode, we did that knee down runner's lunge, like this. Remember that? So we played around a lot with this, and then we played around with this too, that half split. So we're going to see that in our pyramid pose when we come up. But from the knee down lunge, the difference between this and that diagonal lunge that I'm talking about is that the knee is down on this one. To get to the diagonal lunge, I'm going to tuck my back toes. I'm going to lift the knee. And then I'm going to get my torso hovering over this front leg and get long from that back heel up all the way through the crown of my head. Hands can be on blocks. And we're looking at roughly the same thing we looked at on the other side, where the knee is right above the ankle. These toes are pointing straight ahead. The difference is I'm not planting that back foot. And I'm keeping the feet hips width apart. Right, so I'm not sitting on a track here or a balance beam or tightrope. The legs are hips width apart, so I can float my hands up, I can reach my hands forward, I can reach my arms back. Diagonal lunge. And now, I mean, that's it. You know, bent leg, straight leg, hips are facing forward, feet are hips width apart, hovering the torso over the front leg. That's the pose. The difference between a diagonal lunge and what some people call a high lunge or a crescent lunge. Look, in diagonal lunge, I'm going this way. The whole body's at an angle. For crescent lunge, I'm lifting that torso upright and then starting to stretch the back leg. So let me detail that a little bit because there's a couple of nuances we want to get right in our crescent lunge. So I'm still bending the back leg. As I come up into a crescent though, check this out. What I want to do is I bring my hands to the hips and then I want to bend the back leg as I lift the torso so I'm not crashing into the low back. Both legs have a nice deep bend until I square off the pelvis. So it's square with the front edge of the mat. It's not tilting side to side. It's not tilting back. You can imagine that the belly or the pelvis is a bowl full of water and nothing is spilling side to side, front to back. Once I get that dialed in, if I can push that back leg straighter, I can do that. And so this is that high lunge or crescent. A lot of times what you'll see too is people lifting their hands overhead, maybe looking up, maybe pressing the palms together, right? That's one of those classic looking yoga poses. So that's your high lunge. And then what we want to take a look at also is that pyramid pose. So on both of those poses, the hips are completely square with the short edge of the mat in front of you. The next one we're going to look at, pyramid, does the same thing, but the back foot is in a different spot. So again, diagonal lunge, high lunge / crescent lunge. And then for pyramid, what I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten that front leg like we did in that half split. But then I'm going to step the back foot up. And I'm even going to step it over to the side a little bit here. So I don't know if you can see it that well from the camera, but I'll describe it. My front foot, toes are pointing straight ahead. Outside edge of the foot is basically parallel to the outside long edge of the mat. With the back foot, it's far enough up that I can square my hips to the short edge of the mat. Like if I was too far back, I would have a little trouble doing that. So you want that foot to be up. So this doesn't need to be a super long stance either. This is more about our ability to get a nice hamstring stretch in the front, keep the hips squared to that short edge of the mat, back leg is straight, and the foot is pointing up kind of to like the left or the upper right piece of the mat there, the corner. So I look down, it's maybe not even, I mean, you could have it at a 45. I'm a little tighter on that, maybe like a 55, 60. I don't have my protractor with me. But I can still maintain that squaring of the hips to the front edge of the mat. And then typically in pyramid, what you'll see is what we're looking for is this extension out over the front leg like this. Sometimes you'll see it done with the hand. You can have your hands at your hips. You could have your hands at heart center like that. Sometimes we'll bring our hands behind us and either, bump fists like this, grab opposite elbows like that. You can take that reverse prayer if your wrists are okay with it. Mine are barely okay with that for like a second. But the idea is that both legs are straight. You're sealing off the pinky toe side edge of the back foot. Front foot, you're evenly balanced on all corners of that front foot. We can take our hands behind us, keep the chest open, And then it's hinging straight forward. Trying to get the torso parallel. If you can keep the spine straight, you can go even deeper. But if you end up curling down, we don't want to do that, because the straighter the back is, the more that hamstring is going to stretch in the front. All right, so that was diagonal lunge, that was crescent lunge, that was pyramid. All three of them share the same thing. The feet are wide, our stance is pretty wide, and our hips are square to the front edge of the mat. Now, like I mentioned, Warrior One is a little bit different than that. Because of the positioning of the legs, I'm going to go back this way. Because of the positioning of the legs, we're going to have not quite the same range of motion to our hips. So I'll demonstrate stepping into Warrior One, kind of like we did right at the start. So we're looking forward, stepping the right foot to the right thumb, and then we're just pivoting and planting the back foot. So if you remember, in those first open hip ones, I heel-toed the front foot in so that the heel lined up with the back inner arch. I don't want to do that this time. In fact, if I need to, I can step my foot a little wider to the right, so I have a wide stance. So again, front foot is pointing straight ahead, back foot is at a 45, and I come up. Front leg is bent, still. Knee is above the ankle, still. Back leg is straight. Think about spinning that inner thigh kind of backwards. So you're pushing like this. And this is what you want to see in your Warrior One. You're not going to square this left. Like if I drew a line, here's my right hip, comes straight out. My left hip is like a handspan behind that line, but it's not open. My front leg is not rotated at all. It's straight ahead. It's in that neutral spot. It's the back leg that's getting this nice stretch on the outside of the hip. That's what we want in our Warrior One. And in Warrior One, often you can lift the arms, roll those shoulders back in socket, hands come up overhead. And we're not trying to be in a big back bend here either. We're trying to keep that torso in a mountain shape, keep the back foot planted. Don't roll into the inner arch. Seal off the pinky toe side edge. Don't grip the mat with your toes. Get nice and low. This is a very strong, powerful pose, which is why it's called Warrior One. So those are the standing poses that we're looking at in this episode. To recap briefly, we have the open hip family of poses. So Warrior Two, Reverse Warrior, Triangle, and Side Angle, where the hips are open. The torso is facing and parallel with that long edge of the mat. Those are the open hip ones. And the ones where we square the hips are that diagonal lunge, hips are square. Crescent lunge, hips are square. Pyramid, hips are square. And Warrior One, hips are kind of square. So that's where that distinction lies between those two groups of those standing poses here. What we're going to do, as we've done with the rest of the series, is I'm going to turn these stances into a short flow so that you can follow along, get a feel for what these are doing for your body. As you learn the poses and as you start to refine it, a lot of times it's like when you're learning how to drive. When you're learning how to drive, it just seems like there's almost too much going on. You're like, steer, 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 brake, gas, shift, signal, and hopefully not phone, right? But in time, it all just becomes second nature. You don't really think about it anymore because you know what it feels like. You've internalized that muscle memory. You've got your nervous system kind of wrapped around it in such a way that it's not about thinking anymore. At that point, our yoga practice becomes really interesting because each of these poses, and if you stick with it, and I hope you do, if you stick with it, you're going to find that every one of these poses that we do has all these tiny little refinements that can go with it. And it keeps it interesting Because there's always a way you can get a little deeper in the front leg. You can get a little more opening in the hip. You can get the torso just right. You can get the center of gravity just right. You can get the balance between the legs just right. You can get the gaze, the neck. There's so many elements to it. That's one of the great things about our yoga practice. It keeps the mind engaged. It keeps us in the present moment. When we're in a pose and we're working with those little refinements, we're not thinking about all the other stuff that's normally filling our dome. It's really about being in that present moment, and that gives us, it gives our mind some space, which I think is great. So let's do this. Let's come down on our backs. Let's take legs out in front of us, and just start with the feet falling out to the side. No effort in the body anywhere. Let all those muscles just relax. Feel heavy and come to your breath. Inhale, exhale. Take a couple of rounds of breath. Centering the mind, using the breath as an anchor to help center the mind. Checking how the body feels. And then let's find our reclined mountain pose. So we're starting to turn this into an active pose. The legs are straight, the legs are engaged. I think you know the drill. Pressing the heels into the mat, feet are flexed, thigh bones are pressing down to the mat, kneecaps are pulling up to your hips, heels pressing down into the mat, tailbone tilting toward those heels. Let's inhale the arms up to the ceiling and then reach them overhead. Let's take a full body stretch here. So get long from the heels to the fingertips. Pull every muscle all the way in if you can. Contract everything for a second. And then let it go. We'll bring the arms up. Let's bring the legs in. Give yourself a squeeze. Move into this little ball shape. Circle out the back a bit. And then from here, we're coming to our tabletop. So in our tabletop, let's make sure we've got everything stacked properly. So we've done this on the other episodes. We're getting the shoulders over the wrists. And the wrist creases are square to the front edge of the mat. And so, you know, this is one of those things where the mat is a tool, not just to protect our painful little knees, but as a point of reference and alignment. So this is what I'm doing here, and we're going to be doing the same thing when we're in those standing poses. Hips are over the knees, tops of the feet gently pressing into the mat. When you're ready to start moving through your cows and cats, go ahead, drop the belly, lift the gaze, pull that heart forward, hips are lifted, and then reverse it into your cat pose. See if you can start to generate this nice, smooth wave motion, articulating all the vertebrae of the spine, starting at the tailbone, going all the way up to the base of the skull, starting to warm up the torso, starting to get into the muscles that run along the spine. We'll take one more round. It's really just a great warm-up for every flow to do this cow and cat mat work. And then after your next cat, let's go ahead and come back to a neutral tabletop, and we're just going to move back into our down dog. So we're going to practice stepping into these poses, both from a three-legged dog and from our down dog. So on this one, for this series, we're going to do the open hip poses. Let's step from down dog. So push the hips up and back a little bit more. Look forward, and then just see if you can step, maybe in one step, your right foot to your right thumb. So that should get you to the distance where you've got a nice deep bend in that front leg. And then we're going to drop the back heel, heel toe that front foot in so that the heel is aimed right at the middle of that back arch. Have a block handy behind your leg. And then we're going to start with our forearm on the thigh bone. You thought we were going to warrior two, didn't you? We're going to take it the other way this time. So from here, we're starting in our side angle. Let's double check our alignment. We've got the knee over the ankle. So important for us. Those ligaments in the knee, we talked about this in episode 3. You know, they stabilize the knee. They hold everything in place sideways and front to back. We don't want to overstretch them if we don't need to. So having the knee right above the ankle is a very safe spot for that knee. Back leg is nice and straight. I've sealed off the pinky toe side edge of that left foot. Go ahead and lift your left arm up to the ceiling. Push down, like stamp down through that right heel. If you need to rest your shoulder, like my left shoulder is my complainy shoulder, so I'm going to rest it. And we're opening the torso to the long edge of the mat. There's a little rotation in there. And then from here, if you lower the arm, we'll lift it. We're going to leave the legs exactly as they are. And we're just going to lift the torso, setting up for our warrior two. So finding the warrior two, getting that torso upright, getting the chest square to the long edge of the mat, reaching the arms out to the sides. Now I want you to look down, see if you can see your big toe on the right foot. If you can't, pull that leg out to the side a little bit more. Maybe sink a little deeper. Quad muscles on the left leg are working. Gaze is out over that right hand. Relax the area at the base of the neck. And then flip that front palm. Inhale to reverse your warrior. So we're getting the side bend toward the straight leg. We've still got that nice lunge in the front leg. Nice. One more round of breath. That's your quad. That's my quad. And then go ahead, straighten that front leg, but keep that right arm overhead. So this is a reverse triangle, bonus pose. And from reverse triangle, we've got all this length on the right side. Let's use that as we reach the right arm out and over the straight leg. That's the front leg now. We haven't moved our feet. They have not lifted from the mat. And then you can bring that hand down to your shin, to a block behind your leg, to the inside of that front leg. And then the left arm comes up to the ceiling. Think about leaning up against a wall, if there was a wall right in back of you. So you're rolling that left shoulder back. We're keeping straight here on the right ribs. So you could even lift that arm up, the right arm for a second, keep the height. So our ribs are working, the obliques are working here too. Maybe you look up at the lifted hand. Again, that's sort of the traditional gazing point, but if it's tough on your neck, don't worry about it. And then also don't worry about if this hip, the top hip is kind of angling down a little bit. If that's better on your low back, go for it. We'll take one more round of breath. And then we're rebending the front leg. We're going to move those blocks out of the way, frame the front foot, and let's just step back to our down dog. Once you come back to down dog, notice what that right side feels like. There was a lot of work that right leg was doing there. So let's even it out by bringing that over to the left side. So we're going to do all those same poses on the left side. We're going to look forward, and we're stepping the left foot to the left thumb. We're pivoting, we're planting that right heel. And then I'm heel toeing the front foot in so that the front heel lines up at the back inner arch. And when you're ready, bring that forearm to the thigh bone. So I'm going to switch around so you can get the front view. The back view is not all that interesting. For a second I was like, maybe I should stay there so they can see what the back looks like, but who cares? We're going to bring the forearm up to the thigh bone, setting up for that side angle. And then if it's okay on your right shoulder, you can lift that up overhead. And remember, we're trying not to crash all that weight down into this left arm on the left thigh bone. Back leg is straight. Knee is above the ankle. If you want to play with that extended side angle. Reach the lifted arm toward your back foot for a second. And then, you know, you're Pete Townsend, so you're swinging the arm all the way around in a big windmill, and then parking it with the tricep up by the ear, reaching through those fingertips. Again, staying grounded through the outside edge of that back foot. If you took the extended version, we'll lift the arm up to the ceiling, and then we're going to leave the legs frozen. Lift the torso. We're squaring to the long edge of the mat, setting up for warrior two. I can see my big toe, so I know my knee's in the right place. I'm going to reach the arms out. Torso is centered over the hips. I'm not leaning forward. I'm centered, and I'm open to the long edge of the mat. My gaze is out over the left fingers. We're breathing here, lifting up through the crown of the head. And so one of the things about this is we want to feel the legs as this really strong base, this really strong foundation. There's a lot of effort in the legs in this pose. And so if we want, we can maybe find a sense of lightness from the hips up. So imagine there's that little cord pulling your head up, lifting you, relaxing the shoulders. Flip the left palm to the ceiling, and on the inhale, reverse your warrior, keeping that deep bend in the front leg. Back leg hasn't moved. We're stretching all along the outer side of that left rib cage, looking up. And on your next inhale, straighten in the front leg, but keep the left arm overhead. We've got this reverse triangle. Back hand can just be sitting on the outside of the back leg. If you want to bring it to your low back, you can do that. We're going to keep all this length on the left side. Reach that left arm up and out until you can't go any farther. And then the hand comes down. Again, either inside, on top of, or behind the front leg on a block if you're choosing that behind option. You can lift the right arm up to the ceiling. We're spiraling the torso open, reaching for the ceiling, keeping the rib cage straight, particularly that left side. So it's this sideways hip hinge that we're finding in this pose. We'll take one more round of breath, then look down, bend into the front leg. You can ditch your block if it's in the way. Frame the front foot. We'll step back. Let's step back to plank. Let's take a vinyasa. So come to plank, lower down halfway or all the way. Inhale through a back bend, so either low cobra or up dog. And then we're back for our down dog. And let's take a breather. Coming to child's pose. You can bring the sides of the big toes together, separate the knees a little bit. You can drape your torso between the legs. Just coming back to the breath if it got away from you a little bit. Just letting that effort settle. And so comparing just for a moment those knee down lunges and poses we were doing to the standing one, what's harder? The standing ones tend to be a lot harder because your legs are doing a lot more work to keep everything up. You don't have that benefit of something else, touching the ground to give you a little more support. So when you're ready, reach the arms forward. We're coming back to down dog. And let's play with that three-legged dog to a standing pose transition. So on your next inhale, go ahead, lift the right leg up to high. So you're lifting that heel, pushing through the heel. The foot is flexed. Left arm is staying straight. Right arm is straight. And then hinge forward, almost to a three-legged plank. Pull the knee into the chest. So the right knee is right in the chest, and then step that foot through. This time, grab your blocks, and we're going to stay balanced on the ball of the back foot. Back leg is nice and straight. We've got that same deep bend in the front leg. Finding this diagonal lunge. The hands are on the blocks. So this is, again, that knee down, low lunge, except the knee is not down, and it's not low. Back leg is straight. You can keep your hands on your blocks. If you want a little more work, you can bring your hands to heart center. And then from here, Go ahead, bring your hands to your hips. Bend the back knee as you lift the torso. So as you're coming upright here, you're leveling off the pelvis. We're setting up for that high lunge / crescent lunge. Once the pelvis is taken care of, you can stay here or you can push that left heel back, keeping the hips squaring to the front edge of the mat. On your inhale, arms come up and overhead. Maybe sink a little more deeply. Maybe look up, maybe touch your palms. And then we're exhaling the hands down to the blocks. We're going to plant that left heel. And we're going to leave the front foot where it is. We're not heel toeing it in. We don't want them lined up. When you're ready, hands come to your hips. You can start by straightening both legs, and then we're deep bending the front leg, setting up for that warrior one. So remember, this is the one where your hips are not quite squaring to the front edge of the mat, but the back leg is straight. You're still driving back through that back heel. You've still got this deep bend in the front leg. Inhale the arms up and overhead. See if you can find that sense of lightness from the hips up, that sense of effort down below. Both legs are in different shapes, but they're both working hard. Maybe look up again, touch the palms, exhale, come all the way down. If you'd like to pass through a vinyasa here, between sides, it's a nice way to even things out. And we're back into our down dog. This time I'm going to look forward, step the right foot forward, and then I'm going to step that back foot up and over to the left. We're setting up for that pyramid now. Hips are squaring to the front edge of the mat. And this is a pose where you've got a lot of leeway. If you need to widen your stance to get the hips straight to the front edge of the mat, you can do it. If you need to shorten up your stance to do it, go ahead and do it. You just want to feel it in your body. Let's bring the hands out to the side, dial the thumbs down, bring the hands behind our back, either bumping fists or grabbing opposite elbows. Take an inhale, hinge at the hips. We're coming down, trying to get that torso roughly parallel to the ground. Try and keep that right hip from swinging out to the side. Finding this pyramid shape. Both legs are straight, remember. One more round of breath. And then we'll lift the torso up. From here, let's just step that back foot up, finding our Tadasana, our mountain pose. We'll take a round of breath right here. So there is another way to step into these standing poses, particularly the ones where the hips are squared. So let's do that. Let's do that from mountain pose. Because during flows, most of the time, it's going to come from a down dog. We've done that. We know what that feels like. Sometimes it comes from the front of the mat too. So this time what we're going to be doing is we're going to be stepping back to a diagonal lunge. So let's do this. Let's bring our blocks on either side of the front feet. Find mountain pose. Inhale the arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge and fold. We're going to put the hands on the blocks, and then we're going to step the right foot back. So the left leg will be the front leg. Adjust the blocks, adjust your stance. So we came into it from standing. It'd be the same thing if we wanted to go to a warrior two. We just drop the back heel, get that front heel to back inner arch alignment, and lift up. So you can come in from either down dog or from standing. Those would be the most typical ways you would do all that. So we're finding this diagonal lunge. Remember, we're not on a tightrope. The feet are hips width or maybe even a little wider. If you need that stability, go ahead and take it. Push down through that front heel. We're going to make that transition to crescent. So get lighter on the fingers, bring your hands to your hips. Bend that back knee deeply as you lift the torso. Get the torso upright. Hips are square to the short edge of the mat. And then you can press that back heel back if you've got further to go. Keeping that nice deep bend in the front leg. Inhale the arms up overhead. You can keep looking forward, maybe look up, maybe press the palms. And then from here, let's exhale the hands down to the blocks. We're going to set up for warrior one. So go ahead, pivot and plant the right heel. Maybe walk that front foot to the left a little bit. So you're either heel to heel or a little wider. And then when you're ready, lift the torso. Bring your right hand to your right hip and notice if you can push it in the direction of the front edge of your mat. So it's going to stop at a point. That's just the mechanics of the body. But bring it as far as you can. Engage that back leg. You've got that nice contraction of your quads. Nice deep bend in the front leg. Let's inhale the arms up. Look up, touch the palms. Exhale, let's lower all the way down. Let's pass through a vinyasa on this flow. So you're lowering halfway down or all the way. Inhale to your back bend. Exhale, hips up and back. We'll take a breath. And then looking forward, we're stepping the left foot to the left thumb. We're going to hop that back foot up and off to the right. And then lift the torso, straighten both legs for pyramid. As we did on the other side, you have a lot of leeway towards how far apart your feet are going to be and how close they're going to be to one another from the front to the back of the mat. So we do want to get the hips square again. Doesn't really matter that much where the legs are. You'll know you're getting a good stretch when we hinge forward. So again, let's bring the hands out to the side, dial the thumbs down, bring the hands in back of us. Inhale to lengthen your spine, and on the exhale, we're hinging straight forward. Trying to get that torso kind of level. A lot of people can. This is one of those poses, and we all have poses that are built for bodies that aren't quite ours. This is one of those ones for me. I feel like I can never get as deep a hinge as I want because my hamstrings right now are like piano wires, like the low notes. They're so tight. Like I said, that's after 30 years of yoga, so go figure. One more round of breath. Then let's lift the torso, and we're just stepping forward to the front of the mat. Let's just find Tadasana, our mountain pose, for a couple rounds of breath. So rock back and forth on your feet a little. Find that center of gravity, that plumb line, imaginary plumb line running down from the crown of your head to your heels. Palms are facing forward. Crown is lifting up to the ceiling, crown of the head. We're going to take one last vinyasa before we come down onto the mat. So when you're ready, inhale the arms up. Exhale, swan dive to your forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Keep that lift, plant the hands. We're stepping back to plank or modified plank, always an option. Lower down into your chaturanga with knees up or down. Come into your back bend. Exhale the hips up and back. Let's go ahead and drop our knees. Let's come down onto our seats. We're going to set up for a brief forward fold just to release the spine. Those standing poses, the open hip ones, there's a rotation, so we're doing some twisting in those. So let's neutralize everything. Let's stick the legs out in front of us. Get them nice and straight. Sit up tall so you're right on your sit bones. And then inhale to lengthen your spine a little, and on the exhale, you can round forward, again, either grabbing your feet, or if the feet are a little out of reach, you can use a strap. And by out of reach, I mean you want to keep your spine straight. So, we don't want to just do a super, super deep forward fold to try and get our feet if it's going to, pop our lower back. The spine comes shooting out. We don't need that. So you can get everything you need using the strap. It's really important to use the props as tools. This is equipment for our practice. It's not cheating. And you can look and you'll see people online that, there are people that could drape their torso onto their legs, right? I could not do that unless I had a bone saw and some, lock snips. But this is giving me the same thing. Those people who can drape themselves over are super hyper flexible, and they've got a different set of problems. You know, when you're tight, one of your problems is you're trying to just build in a little more flexibility, get those nice stretches. When you're super, super mobile, then you've got the opposite problem. You need to strengthen everything. Otherwise, your joints are just going like kaplooey in every direction. So go to the point where you feel it, and then just start to relax a little. Now you could let the spine start to curl in, just to relax. We'll take one more round of breath, and then you can go ahead, move that strap or let go of the feet. We'll come down onto our back with bent knees. We'll plant the feet. And then for a moment, let's do this. Let's walk our feet to the outer edge of the mat. Let's let the knees press together. Release the low back with this constructive rest. And then let's finish up with a nice spine twist. So let's cross the right leg over the left. Let's slide those hips over to the right. Drop the knees down to the left. You can let them land on a block. That's what I like to do. You can let them float if you want. Reach the left arm out to the side. Allow all your muscles to really just release here. Your legs, your hips, they were doing plenty of work, even on that short flow. You can start to come back to your regular breathing, if you like. Soften around the jaw. Don't scrunch your eyebrows together. Take another round of breath. Then let's go ahead and bring the knees up. We'll just take it to the other side. So this time we'll recenter our hips on the mat. This time we're crossing the left leg over the right. The hips are scooting off to the left, knees dropping down to the right. Left arm maybe reaches out to the left. Gaze can land anywhere. So you can look up at the ceiling, you can look out over the left arm. Depends on how much of a twist you want to bring all the way up to the neck. Allow the body to just feel heavy. One image I've always liked here is imagining a candle out on a hot summer sidewalk. And the wax is just, kind of slowly melting. That's what you want to feel. Because part of our yoga practice also is about the idea of tension and release. So we're engaging the muscles, we're contracting the muscles, we're strengthening the muscles in some of the poses, particularly those kind of standing poses. And then we're giving ourselves built-in time to release all that tension and let the muscles find a level of relaxation they don't often get to. I think that's a way that not only is it good for the muscles, but I think it's really good for the nervous system. We're getting better internally at using the gas pedal and the brake. And we want to keep those two systems in balance. So let's bring the knees back up through center, recenter, uncross. And then let's go ahead, just hug everything in nice and tight. Wrap the arms around the legs. Roll up and down the length of the spine, or take some circles. Or really anything that'll feel like a nice way to end this little flow. And then let's take some Shavasana time. So you can extend the legs out in front of you if you want to. A nice alternative also is to bring the soles of the feet together. Let the knees or the outside of the thighs rest on the blocks at a little angle. So it's a little restorative. We did a lot of external rotation of the legs, so holding them in this spot here can be a nice way to just release everything. And as always, give yourself a couple of minutes for the Shavasana. 4 or 5 minutes is I think, the bare minimum. If you want to go longer, just let the video just run out. Or you could hit pause and take as much time as you'd like in your Shavasana. Those were the standing poses. I don't think we need to review them. We had the open hip ones, we had the ones that are square hips, because that really is the big question, especially when you go to, if you go to a yoga studio and take a class or just do the flows. The two questions with the standing poses are, where do I put my feet? Or these are the most confusing questions. Where do I put my feet and where are my hips pointing? Hopefully this flow illustrated that for you in a way that kind of makes sense. That was episode 4. In the next episode, we're gonna take a look at some twists, which is a big favorite of everybody in yoga classes. So I'm looking forward to showing you guys that one. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate, just put them in the comments. If you liked this, please hit the like button and subscribe. That's gonna let other people know that this is out there, because I think there are a lot of us who are athletes and we like to stay active and we get tight, and yoga is such a good piece to add on to our fitness routine. That's what this whole series is here for. That's what my whole channel is here for. I hope you do find this information valuable. So it was good seeing you. I liked flowing with you. I hope to see you again. Take care.